Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of 0 to 60, and it's finally time to take the 4.6 IS for a first proper drive on the street and see what it does. Now, keen viewers will notice we did actually get it registered. However, we couldn't get it to the normal place where we get the roadworthies done, so we had to have a mobile guy come and go. And apart from just going to take it to put some fuel in it, we haven't driven it in a proper manner, apart from that trip back from Brisbane when it had the broken gearbox. Now, to fill everyone in, we actually bought this car I think about 2 weeks ago now, and the transmission was toasted. I'll put a link to the transmission build in one of the corners, but long story short, it just wouldn't move forward once the oil got warm unless it was in top gear, which is a bit of a problem when you're in peak hour traffic in the city. And somehow we managed to pull it apart and fix those parts, and it seems to be okay. But the only testing we've done was on the weekend, and it was driving it around this block here, up and down some hills and up and down the street, but not in a real world case scenario. So I'm really looking forward to going and taking it for a drive, seeing if the gearbox repair has properly worked, and also seeing what this IS is all about. If you're not aware of the ISs, they come out, I think in 2001 is when they were released, and they were BMW's response to the AMG 55 or the ML 55, which was Mercedes' high-performance SUV. And BMW, I mean, they're always known for, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, they used to be the driver's car. And they really, and I didn't understand this, but they really put a similar amount of effort into making this the driver's SUV, which I'd never really thought of. I thought they'd just slap the bigger engine in it, put some bigger wheels on it, and did it as like almost like a run-out special model thing. But they didn't. There was effort that went into these to make them an M car, even though they didn't have the proper M badging. So the engine is, and there's a bit of a debate about the real history of the engine, but it is the 4.6 litre version of the M62, and it has got heritage somewhere in there with Alpina, although we don't really know what the real story is, whether Alpina put them together, BMW did with Alpina technology, whatever. But it's a very similar spec engine to what used to come in the Alpina B10s, I think they were called, and it is a slightly more powerful version of the M62. In fact, with a tune, the word on the street is that you can get these up to similar power levels to the E39 M5, which is kind of cool. Kind of interesting, not what I expected for the old E53s. Now, I am a bit of an E53 tragic. 2 years ago, actually in 2017, I got one. I sold it in late 2018. So I have had an E53. I had the 4.4 litre LCI model. Kind of love that car. I do kind of miss it, and that's why I'm excited about this. But guys, let's hop in. Let's go and see how different this was to drive around to my old one. So we have still got, I'm sorry that we haven't washed it, to be honest. Normally before we film a car, or even before I do anything with a car that we've bought, I will buff it and make it look as good as I can. We've just been a bit busy lately. It's had one wash, but I haven't put any waxes on it yet because there's a good chance we're going to send it off to a panel beater soon to try and get these paint bits sorted up. And I know panel shops hate silicone, so before I cover it in waxes and stuff, we'll get them to look at it. But getting in the car, they are fitted with different seats than normal E53s. They are kind of, I mean, they remind me of E46 M3 seats, the leather on the outside, and then this sort of Alcantara-y type material in the main part that you sit on. It's really quite a nice feeling. But the big thing is the instrument cluster. I'll put this camera on so you can see it. There it is. These are fitted with the same instrument cluster as an E39 M5. And I guess, I mean, that should be enough info to tell you that they weren't messing around with this car. If they put that cluster in, something special's happening. I'm kind of looking forward to this. I definitely have a spot, I definitely have a hot spot. I definitely have a soft spot for older BMWs. So I'm gonna head out to our normal little test road, and I'll see you guys in a few minutes, and let's talk about what it's actually like to drive. So I've been out on the road for a few minutes, and actually before I give you my opinion of the car, let's cover the factory on paper figures of them, because I guess that's something that we need to put into perspective now in 2020, where even 4 cylinders have more power than this thing's got. But yeah, it was, when it was sold new, sold with 350-ish horsepower, and that is old school horsepower. So it's naturally aspirated, it's not direct injected. It does have variable cam timing, but it's not it's not like what you get on a modern engine. So what that really means is we're talking 350 peak horsepower. We're not going to have huge power as the revs rise up. So when you're sort of cruising around that wide open throttle, 3,500, I wouldn't be surprised if this is under 200 horsepower. And that's where you drive most of the time. It does have reasonable torque figures. However, the torque curve suffers from the same sort of issues. The torque doesn't come in early like what you get in a modern turbocharged engine. So even though it has got 480 Newton meters of torque, this will not pull anywhere near what a 480 Newton meter turbo engine will pull like. Not through the lower end of the rev range anyway. You have to drive it, you have to get it up and revving. The gearbox is the ZF 5HP24. Now, I'm surprised I only forgot that considering how much research I've done on them in the last 2 weeks. But back in the day, they were quite an advanced gearbox. I've got to say, driving it right now, I'm actually sort of impressed with it. So this is... It's a similar type of internals to what's in the ZF 6-speed, and that is really a similar type of internal to what you get into the ZF 8. The ZF 8 is the current 2020 amazing gearbox. They're using them in all the M cars now. They've gotten rid of the DCTs. The main difference between the ZF 8 and the ZF 6 is the way the oil pump system works. The ZF 8 has a different oil pump. Long story short, I think they get higher clutch pressures, and that's why the ZF 8's gears are a bit more snappy. This, obviously, it's quite an old design, but it's not a bad design by any means. It definitely doesn't feel like the old GM-based gearboxes of the same sort of era. In fact, this, now it's had the work done to it, it's got fresh oil in it. It actually changes gear quite well. It's not a fast gear change, but it keeps the power going through the drive chain during the shift. It's quite a nice transition between gears, even if it doesn't kick you in the back. If I floor it now, it's really got to get up in the revs to start going. There it goes all right. Definitely quite impressed with it for what it is, but it ain't modern technology, that's for sure. So how do I feel about this car? So we're driving it down sort of back roads. They're not smooth, they're a bit twisty, and I've got to say the chassis does definitely feel different to my old 4.4 LCI. Now, this is also on 20-inch wheels where mine only had 19s, so the tyres, I'm sure, have got something to do with why it feels a bit more direct, but it's a, I don't want to sound cliche, but it's a weird, confidence-inspiring thing to drive. I mean, this thing weighs 2.2 tons, and I'm going around these corners at the speed limit. I didn't even realise how fast I was going. And at no point, like, 2 fingers on the wheel, and it feels absolutely fine. This is the first time I've driven the car, and I already feel very confident in what it's going to do as the weight transfers. It's not what I was expecting for such an old car, and my old LCI 4.4 did not do it that well. I remember thinking the 4.4 was a good car, a good four-wheel drive, like it's something you could drive with a little bit of enthusiasm, but this, I've naturally just quickly gelled with it. Again, it could be the tyres, it could be the suspension. Let's pretend that it was the IS-ness, the specialness that BMW put into this back in the day. As for the engine, look, I've only accelerated once off camera. I did do a launch the other day when we were testing the gearbox. I thought it felt quite good when we did the launch, but actually rolling the power on whilst you're driving just in D mode, in fact, we're coming up to a section where I will do just that. Okay, so I'll be able to accelerate on this little stretch here. Again, I'm just going to do it in auto mode, and that's half throttle, that's full throttle. So it laboured up, it was slow to rev. Again, it's okay once it sort of gets up in the rev range, but it's not, I wouldn't class that as an M type feeling. That was a very lazy engine. Again, we're in D mode. We'll see. We'll put it in sports mode in a minute. We'll see if it's any different. But yeah, I think my N62 was a little bit better to drive in the automatic mode than that felt then. Just initial impressions. But all in all, I've got to say, this car, for a 20-year-old vehicle, it's done 180,000 Ks, or it's close enough that makes no difference. It's bloody good to drive. The gentleman that we bought it off, although I don't think he was personally very mechanically minded, he did spend a lot of money on it. We paid $3,000 for this car, and in the glove box, in the last 4 years, we've got a wad of receipts that I think total nearly $9,000. So he wasn't shy or afraid of spending money or doing the right thing by the car. So I've just knocked it over into sport mode, and we'll accelerate out onto this 80 zone. We'll see what it goes like. That is more responsive. Engine sounds different. It's revving faster. That's all right. Okay, putting it in sports mode on the transmission definitely makes a difference. Now, don't quote me on this, but I do think from what I've read, this was sort of the first generation of transmissions, these ZF5s, where they have a bigger control over the engine than you might think. Sort of back in the day, the gearbox was really restricted by what the engine was doing, but with these electronic systems that they started to implement around this time, they can control shift points, they can control what the throttle's doing, they can control how much torque is even going through the gearbox. So that is sort of interesting, and maybe that's why putting the transmission in sports mode makes a difference. I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get in trouble for driving an old four-wheel drive too fast. It's kind of funny. Funny in a good way. So with the performance side of this vehicle out the way, we bought it to use as a bit of a daily driver and also as a tow vehicle. I'm getting the feeling it's going to actually tow quite well. I didn't put it on the video, but after we finished messing around doing the gearbox testing the other day, I actually towed the trailer back up the back of the property with this car, and it pulled the trailer with no car on it much better than the van ever did. So that's good to know. I think it's going to be a good tow car, but we are going to use it as a bit of a daily, and I see this question a lot with sort of classic cars as people use them. Can you get away with using something that's nearly 20 years old as a daily? And I know that David and myself are both quite petrol heady, and we will make excuses that other people won't make. But I think these are actually quite a nice, not just nice, but a well set up car to use in 2020. The infotainment that they come with is absolutely horrific. We have ordered a new Android unit to go in there, which there will be some videos on. But all in all, they have brilliant air conditioning, they have cup holders, they have heaps of space. On a road like this, the suspension's lovely. It's not stiff, it's not too jerky. Cruising at highway speeds, the drivetrain, everything feels really good. It's revving at just over 2,000 RPM. Unfortunately, because the vehicle has these, I don't know if they're aftermarket or a BMW accessory, but because it's got these weather shields on, they are catching the wind, making quite a lot of wind noise, so we'll try and quieten them down some way or another. But aside from that, it's actually quite a quiet cabin to be in at highway speeds. It's not bad. I was worried that with the M engine, not the M, but with the Alpina engine, it might take away from its cruisability, but this is still something that's a very comfortable, quiet car on the highway, which is good. Something that people might be concerned about if they are thinking about buying one of these as a daily is fuel consumption, and it's terrible. Holy shit. So this has averaged 18 litres per 100. Now that is since I put the fuel in it about an hour ago. Unfortunately, I did sort of drive it a little bit spiritedly. But yeah, damn, that's quite bad fuel economy. The gearbox is behaving itself wonderfully. That's really impressive. Impressive that I managed to fix it, because I really didn't think I was going to sort that out. Well, just made it back home. That was a pretty good all-round drive, or test drive I should say, as we're crawling up hills, loading the gearbox up. Gearbox seems good. It shifts well at low speed, hills, on the highway. I'm not sure if I caught it on film, but I did actually wind it out before, and it all seems really good. Let's keep forward driving for a bit. So yeah, the 4.6 IS, it was a special vehicle. It was probably more special than a lot of people realise. It was definitely more special than I realised. Do I think you should buy one? If you're a bit mechanically minded and even a little bit of a BMW tragic, I really do think these are going to be a bit of a special vehicle. They are the beginnings of the M SUV. The SUV range, and let's be real, it's something that's just going to keep getting more and more popular. I think American manufacturers, it's hard to find one that actually makes a car anymore. Everyone wants SUVs and pickups. They want the big four-wheel drives. They feel safe. Could it be that in 5 or 10 years' time, the M5 is finished and everyone gives us, all they care about are the X5Ms? Who knows? If that is the case, these are definitely going to be a bit of a sought-after vehicle. There were some fun facts that I've read in the last couple of weeks. There were 600,000 E53 X5s made, and less than 1% of them are IS models. So that means there's less than 6,000, or there was less than 6,000 of these made. That's a pretty low production number for an or an IS type vehicle, like a special BMW. That means there's less of these than there are E39 M5s. There's less of these than there are E30 M3s. They are a very, very rare vehicle. And although I think the general public doesn't give them much love at the moment, it definitely feels like it's going to be a bit of a collector's item. Admittedly, yes, we now own one, me and Dave, but it is a special vehicle. It still feels like an M car. I like it. I like it. Guys, if you get the chance to snap one up local to you for the right price, do it. These are going to be, I think, a bit of a future classic. Anyway, thank you very much for watching along. We're still sort of prepping for Euro Day. We're not too sure if Dave's E39 M5 is going to make it, but if it won't, I think it'll be pretty safe to say he'll be down in this. My 335 is all going sweet, touch wood. I'll be down in Euro Day. I'm still not running a crazy tune because I don't have axles or a diff brace yet, but we'll be down there having some fun anyway. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. I do really appreciate it. All the support, everything, it's just great for the channel. Thank you very much. All right, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.